Alrighty, YouTube Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So I've made adjustments, obviously, on the webcam. I got rid of some of the background excess stuff, so hopefully it looks better on camera. I'm a little more zoomed in, of course. I just think this looks better moving forward, and I'm sure you guys probably think the same. But either way, I wanted to get into this topic. Kyle Shanahan is even surprised that the 49ers are opening up as 2.5-point favorites heading into Philadelphia for this Week 13 game. Kyle Shanahan was asked about this yesterday. Obviously, Kyle doesn't, pay attention to the odds or the spreads or anything of that nature. He's a head football coach of a team, and he's not going to pay attention to that type of stuff. But he also doesn't understand how it was determined that the 49ers were the favorite going into this game. He was asked about it, and he basically said, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I don't really know how that stuff works. He also mentioned how, it is random that the 49ers are favored going into this game. Obviously, the 49ers have been dominant as of late, which I guess in a way would explain why the 49ers are opening up as favorites going into this game. They're 3-0 since their bye week, averaging 30.7 points per game and allowing just 10 points per game with a +7 turnover differential. And then obviously, since the trade deadline when the 49ers acquired Chase Young, the pass rush has clearly came alive in the past couple weeks. Here's a stat, like the 49ers have had a 61% pressure rate and a 15% sack rate since acquiring Chase Young from the Commanders. No quarterback has thrown a touchdown pass against the 49ers since Chase Young arrived, which is also a pretty crazy stat. Opposing quarterbacks have a 56.4 passer rating in 3 games with Chase Young. Nick Bosa has 22 pressures, and Eric Armstead has 16 since Chase Young arrived. So clearly, Chase Young's presence has obviously helped the 49ers. I've seen also a lot of people talk about how Chase Young hasn't did much since being acquired by the 49ers and things of that nature. He hasn't had a lot of sacks. At the end of the day, if you know football and if you are a real football fan, you know that just because a guy isn't getting sacks, that doesn't mean that he still isn't a dominant player. I believe Robert Saleh talks about he's talked about in the past how sacks are one of the most overrated stats that a defensive end or a defensive lineman can have. It's way more. There's more that go into being a top defensive line and being a good defensive lineman, other than just getting those sack numbers. And it's true, like when you really think about it, like Nick Bosa up until I believe the midway point through the season didn't have but anywhere from like 2 to 4 sacks. I believe he had like 2.5 sacks up until week 8, and then of course I believe he's got 5 or 6 sacks in the last 3 games. So, but my point is Nick Bosa didn't have those big sack numbers that he's had in the past, or he didn't have monster sack numbers, up until that midway point in the season. But he also led the league in pressures. He led the league in pass rush win rate. So, there's a lot that goes into having a good defensive line, and it's true. Like going back to what Robert Saleh said, it really isn't all about just the sack numbers. Like I said, there's a lot of other factors that go into being a top defensive lineman. But obviously, with Chase Young being there, that just for opposing offensive linemen, and everybody knows this, but it gives that offensive lineman, the opposing offensive line, something else to worry about. You can't double team anybody on the 49ers now. You can't double team, Nick Bosa, because that's going to open up opportunities for Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and Chase Young, and vice versa. Like, you can go down the list. You can't double team Javon Hargrave because that's going to open up one-on-one opportunities for Bosa and Chase Young, and that's something that the Jaguars did. When we blew out the Jaguars just a couple weeks ago, I noticed that in that game, the Jaguars, and that was Chase Young's first game, I believe, with the 49ers. Yeah, it was his first game played with the 49ers, but I noticed that Javon Hargrave was kind of wrecking the game, and Jacksonville started double teaming Javon Hargrave, and then that's when Nick Bosa and Chase Young started getting theirs and started eating. So, it's one of them things where, the 49ers defensive line has clearly came alive, and clearly, they're a better unit than they were before the acquisition of Chase Young. But, I don't, it's one of them things like this week it's going to be the best offensive line in football going up against the best defensive line in football. I believe I said best offensive line, but that's what I meant. Best offensive line versus the best defensive line. But obviously, in order to stay alive in the race for home field advantage in the playoffs, like the 49ers, like one of the bigger keys going into this game is they're going to have to stop Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to limit him. I think what makes Jalen Hurts so dangerous is his ability to use his legs, and he does that at a very high level. He's an elite quarterback. He is the best quarterback in the NFL when he's facing adversity. His stats when he's down and facing adversity in some of these games, his stats and his passer rating is slim to none. Like, this guy plays better when he is down. So, we'll get into all the keys to win and all the key matchups, obviously, in the official preview video. That's going to probably be up at some point tomorrow. I'm probably going to make that video tomorrow. Maybe Saturday. It just depends. I like making the preview videos, of course, when I know like the final injury reports and things of that nature. But by tomorrow, we should have a pretty good idea of who's playing, who's going to be questionable, and things of that nature. So, even Kyle Shanahan is surprised about the Niners being favored going into this game. I do think it is a little crazy, and I talked about it in the video where, I talked about the Niners opening up as favorites going into this game. So, it is rather surprising. I said in the video that it's more surprising than it is not that the 49ers are going into this game as favorites. But, and I said this in that same video as well, it's going to be a close game no matter what, hence to why the line is at 2.5. I think this time around we just hope that the Niners stay healthy in this game and there's no major injuries. But, of course, we'll see what happens. But even Kyle Shanahan himself, he doesn't pay attention to the odds and things of that nature and the spreads. But Kyle Shanahan's even surprised. He called it random, and he said it even doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, we'll see what happens, of course. We can talk about why the 49ers are favored. We can talk about why the Eagles are underdogs, whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is that's just a line in the game. That's just, a prediction, rather, I guess. One thing that's certain, though, is this game will be close. And like I said, that's hints to why the line is what it is. So, we'll see what happens. But of course, when you look at the Eagles and you look at the Niners, it is the battle of the best two teams, arguably in the NFL, going up against each other. It's definitely the best two teams in the NFC, and this is a game where it's two teams battling. It's going to be a physical game, of course, and it is going to be either the 49ers or Eagles representing the NFC. Without a doubt. So, this is the game of the year in my opinion. I am a Niners fan, so it's easier to say that, but I think any NFL fan can agree. This is the battle of the two best rosters in the NFL going head-to-head, and it doesn't get much better than that.